Well, we just got some sad but not surprising donor conception news. Another doctor was caught switching out the chosen donor DNA with their own. So not only were parents SA'd, donor-conceived children, as a result from this, have been dealing with very severe medical consequences. Let's talk about it, because what's up? My name is Laura, and I'm your donor-conceived person of TikTok. Full story was done by CNN. I will say they did get some details wrong on fertility fraud legislation, so we will talk about that. So donor-conceived person, she doesn't know she's donor-conceived yet, struggled to breathe for years. Doctor told her it was because her blood would not stop clotting and they couldn't figure out why. A single clot alone can be lethal, but the reoccurring and unexplained clots that formed in McKesson's heart and lungs were a medical mystery. Honestly, this right here, medical mystery, is so donor-conceived coded. After multiple surgeries to remove the clots and scar tissue, McKesson traveled to the Mayo Clinic, where she sat in a conference room while renowned physicians and specialists worked through her case on a whiteboard. Through tears, she tells CNN, to hear that they had never even seen it before, I came back home just crushed at this point. Desperate for answers, she turned to 23andMe, and there's the start of the quest. She wanted to do this to see if maybe there is a genetic component to this, which she was proven right. She had inherited a disorder called Marfan syndrome, which is a clotting disorder and genetic, which has some lifelong health challenges. Now, very grateful for her diagnosis, but she was confused because no one else in her family ever had this. We all see where this is going, right? And then, lo and behold, her 23andMe had been processed. She does state that something has always been a little bit fishy because with a lot of her family members, she just doesn't look like any of them. And the test showed that she had 7.5 siblings. She says she was shocked. She wondered, did her dad have like a secret family? That's such a typical like response when you don't know your donor conceived and like all these siblings just pop up. And of course, she starts messaging these newfound half-siblings. And one of the half-siblings messaged back and asked, I don't want to cause any conflict, but I'd ask your parents if they went to see Dr. Pete. Summer didn't know that she was donor conceived. Her parents never told her. Her parents were struggling with infertility and so went to fertility specialist Dr. Charles Pete at Duke University. So they decided to do donor conception and an IUI, which is an intrauterine insemination. Parents were told bring $50 to each visit, and they were told donor swimmers would come from a resident in the university's medical school. Again, this is a very typical donor conception story. At each visit, she said she laid back on the table, placed her feet in stirrups, and waited. And then Pete would walk into the room. What was he doing while she waited? He seemed nice enough and concerned. And they went back to Dr. Pete to conceive their second daughter and then their son. And for each child, Pete used his own gametes without their knowledge or consent. This is SA. While she was waiting with her feet in stirrups in a hospital gown, Dr. Pete went to his office, treated himself, and in the still state of arousal, took his own gametes and inseminated her without her consent. This is SA, and I'm very tired of arguing about that. Now, Dr. Pete at this point had passed away, and they did get in touch with Dr. Pete's raised daughter, and she was understandably stunned and shocked and completely baffled. It didn't even cross my mind that my dad would have been the donor because my dad was the most honorable human being. This is again very typical when it comes to fertility fraud. A lot of the doctors who we have caught committing fertility fraud are considered to be upstanding citizens, pillars in their community. No one would have ever guessed that. Again, it's literally cookie cutter with all of these freaking doctors. Even his obituary said, as a compassionate country doctor. Freaking exhausting. Now here is where CNN got things wrong. Today, these actions and those of Dr. Pete's would be deemed not only unethical, but an act of medical malpractice. Nope, not depending on what state you're in. As far as I remember, only 14 states have any kind of legislation involving fertility fraud. We've not passed federal fertility fraud legislation. Doctors, still to this day, are getting away with it. So unless you're in one of those 14 states, no CNN, this ain't true. And even in this article, they bring up Cecil Jacobson. Cecil Jacobson is a doctor who did commit fertility fraud along with other heinous actions. But he was not sent to prison for committing fertility fraud, CNN. He was convicted of 52 counts of mail fraud, wire fraud, and perjury. Not fertility fraud. No doctor has gone to jail because of fertility fraud. And even McKesson said it's pretty impossible for victims to have any sort of justice in this situation. Correct. Activists are actively trying to get federal fertility fraud legislation passed so we can actually take action and get justice for the victims, but we are hitting obscene roadblocks. Fertility fraud is one of the most heinous things that has happened within the fertility industry, and the fact that victims almost never get justice and the fertility industry is barely lifting a finger to help is absolutely vile. Cases will continue to come out until proper legislation is passed. Doctors will continue to do this because they know there is no consequence. Hold doctors accountable for this. This shouldn't be hard.